Lawyers of Reddit, what was your hold IT moment where you knew you would win? We had some huge issues with the landlord, trying to enter without letting us know beforehand, not answering to fix issues, very aggressive when talking with us, when he decided to sell the place. He didn't check with us about the visits and just showed up randomly with potential buyers. We told him to get lost, he eventually left but called us the same evening to threaten us. We sent emails to remind him of our rights as tenants and he answered by threatening us some more, in an email. We eventually end up in small issues court, not from the US, don't know the name, and he fabricates a story about how we are terrible tenants and we try to discourage buyers. We just showed the judge the emails as well as the open complaint to the police we filled a few days earlier. The judge couldn't believe it and gave him a formal warning, gave us 3 free months of rent. In the end the guy just used a real estate company to sell the place, all went smoothly and we still live there with lovely landlords that aren't completely bonkers. At a restraining order trial it was essentially my client's word versus his, regarding a sexual assault. He did a good job dressing up and acting very appropriate during most of his testimony. But then he was asked a series of open-ended questions and he said something to the effect that, she kept coming up on me with that fucking pussy, allegedly during a lecture, and as soon as he said it a look came on his face and the judge's face and everyone knew the ruse of respectable young gentlemen had failed. I won. Creepy as fuck. Good job protecting your client that day. Parent termination case I was prosecuting. Dad went on how he has changed his life around and worked the AA program. Asked him what step he was on, and he proudly proclaimed 3. Asked him what step 3 is, he had no idea. Then asked him step 2 was. Again, no idea. Parental rights terminated. Got really concerned for a second there that you were terminating parents, and not their parental rights. Not a lawyer, but I'm currently in a custody battle. Mother is saying I can't be trusted because I've been refusing to take our child to the therapist. The therapist testified I couldn't bring our child in because therapy must have both parents' consent, and mother has retracted consent. Your Honor, he won't bring our child to a therapist because he can't. And why is that? Because, Your Honor, I won't let him. This is what we call a fucky-wucky. I worked on a case involving defective processors. In discovery we got emails from the defendant's engineers that had worked on the processors. They were in an Asian country but the emails were in English because they were going to US executives. One of the more senior engineers basically laid out the exact defect we were suing over, explaining what the problem was and why it was their fault, and finishing with "This is big problem, we ship crap to customer." Needless to say we hit them over the head with that in mediation, and they settled shortly after. Engineer being ignored. The sky is blue, I suck at haiku. One of the results of language differences is that when you are trying to communicate an idea and you are not confidently fluent, you avoid nuance and try for clarity. Referring to the problem as "we ship crap to customer" is about as clear as it gets. When I compared the scanned copy of the deed provided by the other side's lawyers to the original my client eventually got around to providing. The scanned copy provided by the other side had a witness signature. The original did not. I've caught this before. I wrote up a settlement recommendation because we had a sloppy record. Client came back with a much better record in response. No explanation of why they didn't provide it in the first place. So we called them. Turned out they used our settlement recommendation as a guide to improve their work. After the lawsuit was actually filed. It definitely wasn't an intentional attempt to commit fraud or perjury, but for my sake and theirs, I'm glad I caught that. Another trick I've seen in Reddit is the last page of the contract will have like one paragraph, then a bunch of blank space, then the signature lines. After you sign, they throw it in the printer and add a few more paragraphs. Very abbreviated. I was prosecuting a convenience store owner for luring a young girl, who regularly came into the store, back to a part of the store to grope/fondle and kiss her, child enticement. It was the only section of the store without surveillance camera coverage. They were in the back room for about 2 minutes and 17 seconds, per the timestamp on the videos. Of the many arguments the defense put on, one was there was no way there was enough time for anything to happen. In my rebuttal on closing, I asked the jury to imagine what could happen in the room in that amount of time, and I asked them to all close their eyes while I timed out 2 minutes and 17 seconds on my watch, in silence. After about 60 seconds, 2 of the jurors started crying. Knew it was going to be guilty right then. I asked them to all close their eyes while I timed out 2 minutes and 17 seconds on my watch, in silence. Holy shit, that was a clever idea. Not only emphasized how long the time period was but also let their imaginations run riot. Here's a good one. When I practiced insurance defense. Was handed a file to take over of a slip and fall. Guy tripped on a hose, tore his ankle. The partner had taken the guy's depot already, so I read the transcript. I'm a Michigan football fan, watched every game for 20 years. This guy testified he was the starting safety for a certain rival for certain years. Also that he graduated with a double major that doesn't exist at that school. I immediately knew this was false. Partner didn't understand. Dug deeper, lied about so much stuff unrelated to the fall for no reason. Eventually found high school records from football injuries of head trauma, knee injuries, and a slip and fall injury a few months after ours. He also testified he rehabbed an ACL surgery after 1 month. Motion for fraud on the court filed, immediately settled. I really don't understand the people who lie about finite experiences. Like, wanna tell everybody you went to the park? Go for it, millions of people do that. Tell everybody you played for Purdue? Not the same deal. Not a lawyer, but we had no evidence that the woman who slammed into my stopped car going 85 miles per hour was drunk. Until she indignantly admitted it on tape in her deposition. She busted into my deposition and demanded she go first because I was a lying bitch. She excitedly told my lawyer that the police report was wrong because it said she was coming from the movie theater when she was actually coming from her friend's bar. Did you have anything to drink at your friend's bar? Of course. How many drinks? I don't know, they just keep my glass full. Did you take any medicine that day? Methadone and low blood pressure medicine. I see. The cops had refused to breathalyzer her at the scene because her husband was a firefighter that they knew personally. They told her to go home, sober up, and go to the hospital later. I heard the whole thing but had no proof until she handed it to me. They settled same day. Yeah, it's amazing what people will say when they're excited. I got rear-ended once, and the first thing she said to the cop was that she had just gotten her brakes fixed, but her car barely slowed down when she pushed the brake pedal all the way in. I made sure to pass that on to everyone involved. Before she said that, I was pretty worried. She came out of her car rubbing her neck, and her official address that she gave the cop was a P.O. box. My client was accused of brutally murdering a dog. Cop testified that there was no testing of the blood, nobody ever found, and admitted it could have, in fact, run away. The eyewitness said she could see the killing down the hallway from the dining room. Cop testified there was no hallway and the dining room was on a different level of the house than the killing supposedly took place. Then the person who was leading the lynch mob against my client around town for the last year testified that she had been in the apartment between the 2 visits by the cop to evaluate the scene. Nobody, a compromised crime scene, witness who couldn't see anything, and admission that there was no proof the dog was dead. Closing argument lasted 3 seconds, Your Honor, I'm asking for an acquittal. Edit, my first award, thanks. For those who asked, this was in Canada and received a fair bit of media attention prior to trial. Who fabricates bullshit like this? What do people gain from it? Not exactly a knew you would win moment, but I got a hidden shout out from a federal judge in a ruling that I consider to be one of the high points of my career. Here's what happened. Before a hearing for an emergency injunction against USDA, I was watching the hearing before mine, a trademark infringement case. At the end of that hearing, the judge accidentally used a pun, and could not stop laughing. She was literally crying. I decided at that moment I was going to intentionally use a pun in my hearing. I did. I accused USDA of engaging in a shell game by illegally diverting some federal funds to an egg industry trade group. The judge called me on it, but laughed heartily. My client won. The judge threatened to put the Secretary of Agriculture in jail. A major newspaper reporting on the case said the judge winced at my puns but agreed with my arguments. False. When the written ruling was issued, the last sentence said that an injunction was issued against USDA's use of the funds for any plans they may be hatching. Undeniable shout out. This, ladies and gentlemen and everyone else, is why you brush up on your pun game. Well done. Humor in the courtroom is as rare as hen's teeth. Subscribe for more hot Reddit takes in your inbox, guaranteed.